So hi, welcome Debbie. I'm so excited you're here of Light Up Your Worth. We met almost 2 years ago, which is absolutely insane in a business course. So I'm so excited to finally be interviewing you.
I'm so excited that I get to be part of it and your first one.
I know it's so exciting. And to think of where we've come since almost 2 years ago is just incredible, where we've, both grown and really expanded. So tell me, what makes you your most badass self?
Oh my gosh. I think when I think back, I was thinking through like coming on today. And I thought, what makes me my most badass self? I think that I feel the fear and I do it anyway. I
Yes.
take risk without always knowing how it's going to come out. And that has come out multiple ways, right? And I've just have had a lot of learning experiences and just keep pushing towards the type of life and being able to help others and serve others as I continually and always in the process of learning and growing and healing myself and meeting incredible people along the way. I think it's our role at this point in our life, this point in my life at 56, that it's, that there's those who help give me a hand up as I was coming up, maturing through the different decades. And I think it's part of all of ours, responsibility.
Yeah.
To help each other, to be kind and loving. And I think that's what makes me a badass woman.
And where do you think that fearlessness comes from? Because of course we all have that. I guess it wouldn't be fearlessness, but that ability to work through your fear. Is that just years of experience that you feel like you've just grown up into that lifestyle of not feeling like you can't do something? You're like, nope, I'm going to do this because this is what I dream of doing.
Well, if you ask my mom, she says I was born this way.
I love it.
I was always like, so for example, she walks me to kindergarten. This is like what, early 70s. She walks me to kindergarten and she wants to stay, make sure I'm okay. And I'm like, bye, mom. She takes my cute little picture in front of the school and then I'm like, bye. And so I didn't even realize that people didn't like move forward. I mean, I don't always move forward on everything, but that I make decisions quickly and I'm not as risk adverse, I guess. I think the greatest rewards are on the other end of like, who wants to have all those I should haves in
Right.
Like I think Maya Angelou says something about that, right? About all of that stuff that we keep inside of us. So if you just don't try it, how will you ever know? And I don't want to be, 90 years old and think to myself, why didn't I try or do it or experience it?
Right. And isn't one of I think I've heard before, the regrets of the dying, and one of them is that they didn't live fully, that they lived for other people, that instead of making decisions for their life, they just stepped forward and said, no, this is what I want. And it's interesting you say Maya, because that's one of your favorite quotes. And I wanted to ask you like what it was about this quote that you love so much. And it says, we delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. And I think that is such a powerful quote, just to imagine that idea of, we have to go through the goo in life, just like a caterpillar, to really step into our power. So what does that quote mean to you, and how does that resonate in your life?
For myself, I met my son's dad when I was 18, like right out of high school. And I kind of hit like this little rebellious age, and where I had been such a good girl and at least what I perceived as a good girl. And then I hit this rebellious stage with the bad boy. We weren't all that bad, just so you know, like, 1 to 10, we were probably, 4, 5, 6. We're pretty mellow.
Right.
But I was involved in this relationship for 20 years, and it wasn't the most healthiest. There were some beautiful things about it, but in that there was also a lot of pain, and the pain really started um there was always a large amount of pain. I didn't respect myself, and so he didn't respect me. And
Mm,
it came through in every part of that relationship. And I was so entangled in it that I didn't even see how much I was hurting myself or how much I didn't value myself. And as after 20 years left and stayed gone, I should say, because I had tried before. And when I came to that age, I was in my late 30s. And by that time, that was all I had known as an adult was like, isn't just this is what we do? We sacrifice that level of ourselves. And so I started to be curious and learn and started down this path of people who had gone before me and started reading even more and more and workshops and therapists and started to realize my own value. And in understanding my own value, I started to accept my own I don't call them mistakes, but my own lessons, my own
yeah.
choices. And so I feel like who I am today, was kind of like maybe a late bloomer and really understanding my own value. So by the time I started to hit close to 40, I really started to, step into who I am still becoming.
Yeah. And
Sorry
you
about
really
that.
had to see your value in order to have someone else see it too, because they may only see you for how they, for what their perceptions are. But when you step into your power, then those other people rise up to meet you. And I think I'm glad that you mentioned that about, that kind of turning point in your life. So do you think that going through that divorce was one of the most significant turning points in your life? Or what do you think was that moment where just things shifted and you finally stepped into that power?
I think as I got closer and closer to leave and stay leaving, I would say yes, it was definitely a pivotal point because it still took years to really unearth. And I can say it still comes up sometimes, right? Like something will trigger and you're like, wow, I didn't even know about that. Like you still unraveling. But when I decided that I needed to really put myself first, I I created support around myself. I had a therapist, I had friends, like those friends who know where the bodies are buried, friends were, not the casual type. We
Right,
had the
right.
friends who were like, you're doing the right thing, you know, like
Yeah.
we're gonna help you through this. And they were there for those ugly, ugly tears that happened and they would happen for years and years, and I got really fortunate is that when it was really, really, really over, my career took off. Everything just started to
Yeah.
blossom. And I had all these experiences that I never in my life would have thought my life would have become because of where I grew up was, working class, um, normal jobs. Nobody traveled, really, or at least that I knew of, more than camping kind of travels and see national parks. And so it just opened my eyes. I was able to travel for the corporate roles and the people that I got exposed to were just like mine, like there's so much more, so I am so thankful now for him not honoring me because I wouldn't
Right.
have had those experiences. I would have stayed, I don't know, I want to say stayed small. I wouldn't have, we always hear about becoming your potential. Well, I would have probably have stayed there and been okay. And
Absolutely.
that wasn't my purpose. That wasn't my purpose to um, to not keep going.
Yeah.
that I had experienced like when I was in high school, say, because I didn't go straight to college. So who people thought I was then and then who I was for those years in between were very different.
Right. And it wasn't until you were brave enough to make the hard decisions that you were finally able to see what your life could be. And I think sometimes people get stuck in that feeling of safety. Well, this is safe. This is what I've known. This is what I've done. And this is how it's always going to be. And that they never fully blossom out. And I do love that you said you also experienced true friend relationships, those besties that stood by you, because in those moments of uh, trials and tribulations and strife and uncomfortability, having best friends around you to support you is one of the most badass things you can ask for, right? Because dealing with things on your own is so difficult. And it reminds me when just the other day, someone had posted, "You will bloom if you take the time to water yourself." And I thought, oh my gosh, I know, I get chills.
Body tingles.
Because when my friend posted that, I thought, why is it that we always forget that we need to be watered? We're constantly wanting to water other people and like sprinkle them with goodness, but like to be able to step up and say, this is what I want in my life is such a powerful thing. So powerful.
It is. And stepping into the unknown at that point that I knew that I truly needed to leave for me and my, our son, that what if this is what he thought relationships should be like?
Right.
Like started to really hang really heavy on my heart of like, what if he thinks this is okay? Would I want him to treat his wife like this or his girlfriend or his children? And
Right.
And I thought, no, I mean, and in all honesty, we're all duality. So he was a good person. He just didn't want the same things I wanted. And so we would go in these, toxic kind of circles of, and I would just fall right back into it going, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing. But when it's at that point of where I really needed to leave, I didn't even know what was out there. I honestly, when I first left, I didn't know like if I would make it. I just couldn't see myself still, even after I left, without him in my life. And so it took years and therapy, and coaching and journaling and all the things like, that's when I started to find energy healing, of trying to really excavate out stuff that was in my own belief systems. Like, how did I get all these limiting beliefs? Did he add to them? And I think it took a good solid 10 to 15 years, no kidding, before I had unearthed so much that was related to him, where I was then able to get to the true cause of what was underneath. Why did I accept this behavior in the first place? And then create all of that trauma, for myself. And so, that's why I'm such a heavy believer in all of the stuff, right? It all played a part in uncovering and still uncovering every day. I think I become a better version of myself.
And I think that's important for people to recognize that somebody may walk up to you today and say, damn, she has her shit together. How come I don't have mine? And then I would want that person to go, wait a minute, look at what it took to get there. Like sometimes people see the end result and they forget that there's a process that happens. Like it's not like one day someone just wakes up and they're just amazing. It took years of either therapy, coaching, and getting into that energy work. And I'm so glad you mentioned your energy work, because I definitely want you to have a chance to explain like the story behind how Light Up Your Worth came to be, that idea of where it started from, how did you get started? What inspired you to get started? Because I feel like that whole process really brought you to the concept of Light Up Your Worth.
Yeah, it's, well, in this journey, I I should say Reiki discovered me,
Mm.
back after 9/11. I had been traveling for my corporate job and flying, and I was home that morning. And I lived in San Jose, California, in the Bay Area. And my house that I had bought by myself, okay, at the time, yeah, I think it was like only 25% of women were owning homes at that time. And I had bought a house and I was mortgaged to the hilt. I can tell you, right? Like
Yeah.
I was maxed out financially, emotionally, doing a lot of travel for my corporate role, which I really did enjoy the work. I was just worked a lot of hours, single mom at that point, and I bought this house. And so I was flying that day or the day before. And so my girlfriend was calling to say, hey, like, are you there? I knew you were traveling this week, all freaked out. And so after that 9/11 happened here in the States, I just collapsed. I think from physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, the stress of, this big, huge purchase of like $500,000, back
Yeah.
not what it, gosh, if I can do the math, what, 21 years ago now,
It's
I had a
probably worth like 2 million at this
$550,000
point.
house.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. Like, and I didn't make that much money. I didn't, and
Yeah.
here I was in this home that I had worked so hard for and wanted to give to my son and myself for some stability. I thought that would bring this different feeling. It didn't, right? It was what I realize now is that it was just a possession. But through this, through discovering Reiki as my first energetic healing, was that I was able to realize that there were other things that I had always felt differently about myself, and it just kind of let it blossom within myself. It was like I started to water that seed
Yeah.
that had been there the whole time, just waiting for me to start to remember who I was. And so you fast forward now after multiple personal development programs, multiple modalities, and it really connected me with my own intuition. And I believe that all the spiritual modalities that are out there, and there's so many coming through, new ones now, that they connect you with your own intuition if you allow them to. And for us as women and men, even to trust our own intuitions. And I see them as a tool to help us further ourselves along and remember who we are. And so they've
Yeah.
been such a huge impact on my life. What I've realized is that as I started to step into my own worth, I showed up differently. And this is from people telling me this, right? Like, wow, you just
Yeah.
have this light about you. And and you just have this like strength, or I was inspiring people. And I was like, how am I inspiring people? Right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure it out. but I've always believed in myself and not believed in myself, if that makes sense. So when I heard about
Absolutely.
like the imposter syndrome, then you're like, oh, okay, well, let's do this. I believe in it. And so I was part of that coaching program last year, and I had been talking to another girlfriend for probably a good year, 2 years, about, I think a podcast would actually be really fun, because
Yeah.
I am that person like at a dinner party who, if we meet, well, when we used to have dinner parties and those kind of things, more social
Yeah.
events, is
Yeah.
that I was always curious, like, how did a couple meet? Or how did you find, oh, I love that jewelry. Oh, tell me more about that crystal that you're wearing. I was always super curious about people's stories. And
Yes.
so I thought, wow, I've met some of the most amazing healers, and I've met some amazing coaches that I've had. Wow, what if people don't know where to begin, who to trust? And wouldn't that be cool to share their stories? Plus, I was curious. one of my first 5 guests was my friend Alora. And I had met her in a meetup circle in the Bay Area. And I didn't even know, I'd known her, a good 10 years now. I didn't even know her story. I didn't know, how did she get started? What was her beginnings? How did she do this? And so that sparked a, like, I think I'm just going to do this. And so I didn't do any planning. I basically sat in my room, scared, told a little bit of my story, and then published. And I was out there.
Yeah, do it scared. I love it.
I did it terrified. And then I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Like, I just shared this super vulnerable part of myself. And I'm scared, right? Because it was like the big coming out of the spiritual closet.
I love that. Yes. Yeah.
And then guess what happened? Nothing. Nobody. Everybody's like all caught up in their own stuff. Nobody realizes, right? And then by this time, I've built up so many friends who are like, oh, well, what is that? Oh, well, that's pretty cool. And so I just, I know that when people believe in themselves, like that self-acceptance of and understand their own value, their own worth, that it shines through when people have those moments, and they're excited and you're like, oh my gosh, if they could just see themselves, you want to just like hold up a mirror and go, look how amazing you are. You're brilliant. You're loving, you're intelligent. And let's share this. Let's share this with the world. The world needs more of this,
And when you shine your light, it's such an amazing thing because you see such a vibrancy and people are attracted to light. They want to be around that. And so like when you spread that out and then those people now have their lives lit up and then they're impacting others, we could really have like such an amazing, just a lot of women feeling their absolute worth. Because I feel like when you mentioned that not feeling good enough, it's like, where does that come from for women to feel like we are not worthy enough to share? Because I feel like sometimes people, men, will easily say, oh, here I am, here's my thing. And women, some of them say, so I want to start a podcast, or I'm thinking of doing this. Or even I think back to those women who are in the MLM market, which some people think negatively on. And I think, no, they're out there trying to build a life for themselves. Why would you ever dim that light for them? What is so wrong with wanting to expand yourself and go out there and do something that makes you happy? And so I love that you did it scared. I love that you said, I'm just putting it out there. I'm just going to do it. And then it just kept going right after you did that. Then it's just,
then I started this huge, learning curve of what to do. Like I'm still learning. I have published 85 episodes this week, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like I've interviewed like probably 120 people now.
Wow.
And it just brings me so bliss to know and to hear their stories and to connect with them and to hear the feedback of how they've made an impact on others. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's not always been easy, but it's been fulfilling. And I know, though I don't know where it's going to go, where it's leading to, what I do know is that I trust to take the next step. And, the other thing I wanted to address sometimes is that fear's that's a squirmy little thing, fear. Sometimes we think that fear is like so obvious to us, but when we hit our next up leveling, as I call, when we start walking through fear, feeling it, not being, I don't believe in being fearless. I think we need to feel fear because fear is created to keep us safe at a certain level, right? So based upon our subconscious, and all those fears were created before we were 7 to keep us safe. They have a place. But fear also starts to look like, well, I can't figure out this tech. I need to know this. I I don't know how I'm going to reach anybody. I don't know what to say. I don't have time. I don't have the money. Fear shows up with resistance. It fears up with being unsure. That self-doubt really starts to play in with fear and stepping into and walking through it. Because what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're doing, but you know what? We're all figuring it out.
Right.
We're all
Absolutely.
figuring out. And we have a tendency to compare ourselves to somebody who is down the journey, right? Like if I saw myself now from when that lady, that woman who was leaving this relationship that wasn't the best thing for her, then I I don't know if I would always recognize all parts of myself. And why
Yeah.
would I compare those two people? Because I'm further on in my journey of doing the work, the really deep
Right.
excavating of conscious and subconscious beliefs. And so,
Right. And
whew,
you got to meet the Debbie that you are today. And, imagine if you hadn't have done that path, what Debbie would you be, and to really, navigate that process of figuring out who you are is like just an incredible experience because going through that's why there's an author who said there is no good or bad memories because you might have a bad memory that actually becomes really good, or maybe you have a good memory that actually becomes something that is not as happy because maybe that person has passed on, and so now you think about that last time that you saw them. It's just really intriguing to think about that. And I love that you said you've interviewed 120 different souls. To think, wow, I have interviewed 120 different people. Would you say that there are some of them that were really just influential and impactful in your life? Or do you think that as a collective, all of them had this amazingness to offer? Like, is there a couple that you feel that just changed everything for you?
mhm. Yes, yes, most definitely.
Mm.
I think they were all pretty amazing. And they're all on different parts of their journey because I feel like when I'm connecting with them and when they've allowed me to connect in and we go to this really deeper place, I think that shows through. Like
Yeah.
I can, as an intuitive, right? An intuitive um, who has accepted that part of herself and pays attention to it, is that I c I can tell who's done more work. And so when I've worked with, I'd say probably 85% of them, I've done a session or I've done work. My current one-on-one coach is somebody I've already interviewed.
Yeah.
And I've done work with multiple people, where I've booked a session for myself. If I hadn't already had a session with them, I've read all of their books. And wow, there's some wisdom there in those books of the authors that I've had on.
Yeah.
And, I go purchase the books for the most part, right? I invest in them because I believe in what they have to say. And so, because how can I bring a listener forward into a journey of talking through with somebody if I haven't even invested in the book myself
Right.
or I haven't
Yeah.
read it? Like that that's just not how I roll anyway. Like
Yeah.
I want to really connect with who they were when they wrote this book as well and their experiences. So I would say there's a few though that have really rocked my world. Um all of them have all left an imprint on me, on my soul, and have helped up level me. I feel like the person who started that podcast, like, oh, I'll become more visible now. Now I'm wanting to become more visible to others,
Mm.
on the other side, like we're doing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so interested in that when I first started. I just wanted to highlight their stories. What I've realized is that I actually have a story myself.
Right. And
And
share that. Yeah.
and that, I want other women to step into who they are. And you don't have to know who it is. You don't know who you're becoming just by taking the next step, listening to your intuition. And if you don't trust that intuition, try it on simple things.
Right.
It
So
doesn't
if you
have to
were
be
to
all or
take,
nothing.
right. And I love that you said it's more about sharing your story as well, because it's wonderful to hear other people's stories, but then we also forget to share our own. So I know that in our previous conversations, you've mentioned wanting to write your own book one day. So if you were to write a book, which I know is already on your horizon,
Yep.
what would be the topic of your book, or what would you want to write about? Because I think it's, to me, it's so funny. Anybody is capable if they want to, but there's only a few that really take that step to write a book. And I always feel that authors are celebrities, in my opinion. Like, I'm not a fan of celebrities. But when I think of an author, to me, that's a celebrity, So, you're a celebrity in my life, of course, but once you become an author, I'll be like, oh shit, Debbie's an author now. She's kind of, advanced. So,
Oh,
well, what would you write a book about?
oh my gosh. So the book that I have is based upon ancestral healing with my own family tree. So
Mm,
one of the spiritual gifts that I've been blessed with is being an advanced sacred soul alignment practitioner.
mm,
And when we do that work, it goes back and starts to heal at least 7 generations back of yours.
wow.
So if I started to do the math with that, okay, I got back, maybe was it 3 or 4 levels, and I was back 100 years. Well, 100 years ago, women didn't vote, or barely were getting our rights to vote, right? And
Right.
so what I've discovered is that I I started to dig into my family tree of, like, just with my mom and my grandmothers on both sides. And then you start like really digging into, like, oh, so you were born in this part of Nebraska, in this city at this time. What was going on in that city at that time? Oh, you were born in a huge depression in that whole area where people were leaving. They were out on a farm. I mean, and so what was that life look like? So my book is really about all of those subconscious beliefs that I inherited in my DNA and how I have been that person to help heal my generational wounds. And I continually work on those because I'll find out, like, well, why was I so subservient? I'm not a subservient person
Hmm.
at all. And why was I that way? Well, that's my DNA. I've inherited it, just like I've inherited my blue eyes, is that there are behaviors that are so instilled with us. And I'm at the belief system that just like my hair color, or, I have big thighs, that I inherited that in my DNA. I
Mm,
inherited certain characteristics about myself, certain beliefs that weren't straight from my parents, that were something that was going through. And I think as women, we inherited that. We couldn't own property, we couldn't vote, we didn't have a way to voice. So learning how to voice, our opinions is super important. And the other thing I discovered is that at least 4 generations that I know of, there was sexual abuse.
mm,
And that stuff stopped with me and my sister
yeah.
in this generation. My mom was super vigilant. We didn't know this as children, but she was super vigilant of being a protectorness. If we had odd situations happen, my mom stepped in and was like fierce, mama bear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, nope, not gonna have you be around those people or that person. And nope, if you think this is uncomfortable, then she believed us. Well, we didn't really know why.
Yeah.
Now I know why, right? Like, after 40, I find out why. And so my book is about understanding that belief system and the beliefs that I have freed up and healed my own ancestors. What could I help to heal my own grandmothers, great grandmothers, and how they were treated, and how that has rolled through me, and how I've been that person to say, no, enough's enough with this. We can do this. And because I'm also at the belief that as I heal this, it also heals my son, it heals my unborn grandchildren, like their children. So the more work I do on myself also helps clear these generations of stuff that happened in my family and the communities that they were all. And my mom has actually helped. So we've been going back. We're still back at my grandmother's stuff, because both sides, because there's some really fantastic stuff that my mom's mother did. I mean, she put a man in prison. She was married more than one time. She was valedictorian. I mean,
Wow,
from
she
a
was living it
little,
up. Yeah.
she was. And if you met her, right, how the person I met when I was born, I think she was already in her 40s, probably 40s, late 40s or something. Is that I just met this most amazing woman who never judged me, who loved me unequivocal. Like there was nothing I could do. She always saw the best in me, always. And
that's what I love about grandmothers. They always do.
oh,
They're so powerful. They really
so
are.
powerful, right? And so I had no idea about all this other stuff growing up. Nothing. I had no idea that she had put somebody in prison, her own husband in prison, and like for ungodly, of things that he had done. And so you start finding all these things out about what they overcome. Man, talk about badass women. Whew.
Yeah. Well, and just learning the history of your own family and what you come from also makes you realize, wow, that's part of my generation. This is what made me so badass. And, it's almost like I wish that everyone was required to kind of keep a journal of their life, because imagine going back and reading what happened to your ancestors without having to do so much research. You could just say, hey, I'm just going to go to the library and check out Debbie, what's her story? Let me, pull that out and see that. And I love that you heal ancestral trauma, and that's what you want to talk about, because it reminds me of the descendants of the people who survived the Holocaust. They've done research that they've discovered that there's something in their DNA that relates to trauma, and it's like it traveled through the DNA. And so it's just because it was such a powerful and terrible thing that it impacted that life. And so to be able to heal that is so powerful. And so how do you go about that process in the healing? Is it just learning about it and what happened, and then doing energy work to clear it? Or how do you actually go through that process?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. And I love that you mentioned that that study. The one I've read about was from the one in University of Michigan or Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
the Minnesota one that I did, that I've heard about. But I think people are becoming more aware of the generational trauma that occurred, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like think about all the atrocities that have happened to people, that we've done to each other.
Yeah.
And so for myself, what I've done is that I go into a more theta brain state. So it's more of a meditative state, an energetic state where you're opening up to your conscious, not just you're going through your subconscious, because we have about, depending on who you talk to or read, it's between 70 and 80,000 thoughts a day. And about anywhere from 85 to 90 to 95% of them are subconscious. So we develop this, right? We develop all of these thoughts before we're 7, and they move into the subconscious. There's a lot of research out there. And I think Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton are some of the people who really started to talk about epigenetics. And now it's being done in the universities, right, over the last 10 years as well. And so for myself, I use the energetic healing And at first it was doing some of the general healings that I can do, right? Like I can go through and do a spiritual detox, for example,
Mhm.
as one of my alignments. So it feels like meditation. It goes in and it starts to clear and clean things out or release or pull in what it would feel like. So maybe I've never experienced what it feels like to be accepted in the work. I can um, do a recording for myself or for somebody else or do it live, and it pulls in what that feels like to your subconscious.
Mhm.
So, it's not, one and done. It's something that I listen to frequently. And then all of a sudden I start feeling that feeling, right? Like I recognize it when I feel it. What if
Yeah.
I've never truly ever felt joy?
Hmm.
What if you've always like been on the go, 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 and you never really actually felt joy? Well, this is part of that work. But so for the ancestral part is it's been a mix. It's been a mix of like, okay, I'm working on these alignments that Alicia Hartswell has created, and I can start to feel lighter. I would start to feel differently about certain circumstances. And then as I have found out more about my own trauma and, ancestrally, is
Yeah.
that I would go searching for those specific healings and pull those in around certain memories that I knew about. And so I could target them. I could think about that as well. So that's been like a duality. If I've known about certain situations, I can also do that now, because for the example that I found out that I've am stopping that line of the sexual abuse. I knew that there was sexual abuse. So there's a thing called womb healing that
Mhm.
people can do as well. And so I worked with my friend Sandra, who's also been on my one of the early podcasts. And I've done her womb healing for myself.
Mm.
And I was shocked of how much stuff is in our wombs, where we all have it, and
Yeah.
how much we're talking some ugly cry stuff that came up
Yeah.
that had nothing to do with me. Like I've never been sexually abused. And so this cleared out so much of that, which I would feel later as certain fears that I would have about this. Like I used to have dreams about certain situations,
Hmm.
so much so that I would have dreams of waking up and seeing somebody in front of me, like, and be startled, right? And that has only got to be from a child,
Right.
somebody else waking up with, not good stuff happening. And so I had to realize I went and got LASIK surgery so I could see at night, so that I would never be startled to be woken
Right.
up
To be able
and see
to.
somebody and not
Yeah.
know who it was. That's how much would thread through my own life, how it showed up. And so um being able to then address that, right? Like what do I need to help clear out that I feel safe? Because that's an underlying thing in ancestral healing too, is the feeling
Hmm.
of being safe.
Right.
And 100 years ago, just 3 generations ago, we were like property.
Which is just when you think about how far we've come, we still have so much to go, so much work that needs to be done. But when you think of where we've come from, the way things were just a few hundred years ago, or even a couple hundred years ago, it's insanity to think of how much we've grown as
Mhm.
women. And I think I love that you discuss your energy healings, because what if somebody experiences your energy healings, they are so incredible. Like you had one where I just felt like this lightness of just, buzzing all over me, and I thought, oh my gosh, like this was really good. Like, and it's incredible. I can't remember if it was your Morro Bay healing, maybe I
Mm,
think it might have been, but there is just something special about going into that meditative state and really experiencing and letting yourself feel. When you mentioned like letting yourself feel the fear, letting yourself feel it, it's so important because so often, especially in my generation and maybe in yours as well, it's just brush it under the rug, just brush it under the rug. Don't feel that. Don't feel that. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. You know, stop crying. Don't feel that emotion. But when you actually feel it, it's such an incredible experience because then you step into, okay, feel the grief or feel the anxiety, let it wash over you, and then say, okay, I can handle this. Because if you just keep brushing it under, if you just keep moving it aside, you're never going to know how to handle it. And I think that's such an important lesson to learn, that you just got to let it, just feel it, just let it be felt.
Yeah. Well, we had to suppress our feelings, right? I mean, we still are told to suppress our feelings still to
Mhm.
this day. And what happens is we suppress the feelings. They actually, our body remembers those things and they get
Mhm.
stuck in our body. And there's so many people who talk about this, you know, Carolyn Miss, Louise Hay, Bruce Lipton, you know, there's a Swedish lady about our bodies retain all this stuff. And there's hard research to show that that is what actually causes disease. I have a book that I go to frequently by Everett Rose, and it talks about, you know, even if your foot hurts, go look that up. Well, that will tell you what feelings you're actually suppressing and need to go look at in your body. And so being able to address all of these ancestral things with, you know, very specific questions to ask, you know, journal prompts, how do you get in there and start to figure some of this out? Super, super powerful. And
Yeah.
um, and the thing I wanted to mention too is when you do the energetic healing, is that and having experienced more healers than I've ever experienced, especially in the last 2 years. And I thought I have tried everything. Well, there's still
Right.
new stuff that I'm learning, right? Or that I'm
Yeah.
experiencing. And what I've realized is that you and I could be doing the exact same thing and energetic wise, right? Same modality, but we all come from it differently. We all transmit different energy. We all transmit our own experiences, our own healing is part of how our energy is. That's why it's so fabulous that we have so many people constantly learning more and going, hey, I want to become, I want to practice Reiki.
Yeah.
That's a really common one, right? Like
Yeah.
now it is. When I learned it, everybody's like, what? What's that? You know, and, you know, even though it's been around for a long time, but I encourage people to go find that out and also to find out use your own discernment with
Mhm.
whose energy feels good to you. It's not that they're not a powerful healer. It's just that maybe their energy doesn't, you know, resonate with you. It's not,
Right.
you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't the energy. Well, maybe it's their energy, even though we're
Mhm.
all vehicles to pull through the energy, and we all have that ability. We all have that intuition. It's
Yeah.
just some of us go study it more and trust it and, you know, feel confident in it. So, you know, so as people are looking for somebody to work with, you know, I mean, I have, you know, at least 85 people now, right? More to
Yeah.
come that you
Yes.
can
Yeah.
work with, and also realize even though they might be doing something very similar or the exact same thing, we all have different little spices. Instead of just vanilla ice cream, somebody might have, oh, I'm also a theta healer. Oh, I also bring in crystals. I also use essential oils. Or I do stuff, you know, different types of, I do cards, I do, you know, multiple other energetic healings, and all of that becomes what's in our little mix. I call it the crock pot, right?
Yeah.
Of what you've thrown in for different spices and then our own life experiences.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so many healers, why it's so beneficial to try so many different people and then find the one that really resonates with you. You're like, oh,
Absolutely.
you know,
And of course, like sometimes people will try one little thing and they'll think it's too woo woo. And they're like, nope, that doesn't work for me. There's probably people out there who like think crystals are, oh my gosh, like, no, we can't do that. Or, they'll think if somebody says the term, practicing more about the earth and loving Mother Earth. And they say, oh, I love that. I'm all about, protecting the earth and getting herbs and really feeling more spiritual. And then you say, oh, well, that's witchcraft. Witchcraft, like, that's terrible. And it's like, no. Do the research. It's not a terrible thing. It just means that you are more in tune to the earth and you want to use crystals and herbs and give back to what you're taking from it. And I think that's so important to just become knowledgeable. And I think some people are fearful if they don't know about it, it must be bad. Like, I've always been told it's bad, or I've always been told, that doing those kind of things aren't okay. Not that Reiki would be bad or something like that, but people have these negative perceptions of that. And so would you say that like your favorite self-care practice is that ability to find what energy healing work that you like the most? Or would you say that meditation is more your jam when it comes to your favorite self-care practice?
Oh my goodness. I would say, well, meditation for me is connecting in with myself and listening and giving myself that ability to connect with my own self and connecting in with my higher source. So for some, that's God, it's the universe, it's whatever people want to call it, right? Like whatever resonates with them. And I think any way that we can connect in with our own soul and connect in with something greater than ourselves and pause, whether it's walking in the garden, walking in a forest, or swimming in a pool, whatever
Yeah,
that is, I would say is super, super important. And it really has changed my connection when I do the energy healing, though, because then when I'm connecting into a source greater than myself, then because that's who's actually doing the healing, I'm simply the vehicle for it, is that it
right.
clears out my channel to have an even more powerful experience for those that I'm working with.
I love that. And so with that, what do you think is one small change that people listening or watching that they could take to really step into their most badass life? Or what's one small thing that they could do today to say, okay, it's time for me to research this energetic modality, or it's time for me to step into that? What would you recommend as one small thing they could do?
One small thing is to be conscious of their own thoughts.
Mm,
So being very, very conscious of what they're actually telling themselves, and then flip it around, because I think everything is positive, and then say you want something, you want more love with your partner, and then you find out, well, on the flip side of the hand is they actually share that love, right? Maybe they do a lot of volunteer work, or they spend a lot of time with helping their elderly parents, or etc. Right? So I think
mhm.
understanding what those thoughts are, and then giving yourself the opportunity to go, wow, would I talk to my best friend like this?
Oof, yes.
Ooh. So even taking a day or using index cards, like, what are some of those thoughts that you've caught yourself thinking? Write them down and then do it, instead of saying this, what if I said this?
Yeah,
And
changing the narrative.
carrying
Absolutely.
exactly your own narrative to your own self, and see how much you're actually saying to yourself that isn't supporting who you really are.
Yeah. And I think so, that's one thing that I try to teach my students is I'll say, you are your brain. You are telling yourself exactly what you want it to believe. So when you say, I'm not worthy, I'm stupid, I'm not capable, your brain's like, oh, okay, cool. We're not capable. But if you step in and say, nope, I can do this. I'm going to do this. Watch me. you know, you can stand on the side and you can support me, but I'm moving forward with that. And I think sometimes people get a little bit nervous and they'll judge that person who's so confident, because there's that part of them that can't step into their own power. And I think you remember when we read the Untamed book by Glennon Doyle, such a powerful book, in my opinion.
Yes.
And she talks about how we shame women when they are doing something great, because we can't step into that. And we can't step into that idea because it's like, oh, well, look at her. Look at how much she's doing. And I know we've all probably said it in our lifetime. Look at her. She's so pretty. I hate her. And it's like, wait a minute. Why? She's so pretty. I love her. Let's, rally around each other. And of course, that's probably the patriarchy that made us hate on each other, because they wanted us to pit ourselves against each other. But
yeah,
we're like,
it's the witch wounds, which is a
right?
whole other conversation, right?
Yes,
witch wounds.
We have a whole nother, absolutely, a whole nother one.
Yeah. And I think the most powerful words in the in our any language is I am blah blah blah. So one of the most common ones that people say too, they've come through their day and they're like, I am so tired. Well, what do you think is going to happen? You're telling your body doesn't know against positive or negative thoughts. It just knows, oh, I'm tired. Right. So, when I'm going through challenges, that's why venting is so unhealthy for us. And then people are like, well, then how do I process this? Yeah. Well, we need to choose our words carefully, even if we are needing to release stuff, like I'm currently experiencing some challenges with, I'm feeling physically tired. Okay, well then we're not putting the I am out to the universe, because the brain doesn't know the difference. Yeah. So you talk more about the feelings associated versus what you are. So you might say, would you say I am feeling, because there's that I am. How would you change the narrative then to, instead of saying I am blank, what would you change it to help change that perspective? I've been using the currently I am experiencing feeling, whatever it is I'm feeling, feeling sad, or so I feel sad. I feel, and I think changing the thought process of not venting, but sharing. So you could say, I feel like my voice is not valued. How can I make my voice more valuable? Is my voice valuable? Maybe it is, and I just think it's not. Would you say that's how you would approach it? Yeah. I like to use open-ended questions too, with, the what's, like coming from a curious point of view. What does curiosity want you to know? What would you ask yourself about that situation? Yeah. About why you're feeling that. What is that? And kind of go through, there's a tool called the 5 whys that you can ask. Well, and you just walk through that until you kind of get to some of the underlying causes of what you're thinking or feeling at the moment. And then you realize that, oh, my big thing is, how much did I sleep last night? Did I sleep? Like physically, right? Like it all goes back to a lot of some basic self-care. Sleeping is a good thing for us. And realizing at what point, how much sleep does my body need? And if I'm not able to get that amount of sleep, then what do I need to look at in my own life to be able to help my body get what it needs? Yeah. And sometimes we do forget that. We forget that we have to take care and water our own selves, because I've seen a meme that's kind of popular, and it'll say, I have headaches, I'm not feeling good, and, I'm always cranky. And it says, well, all you have to do is get more sleep, drink more water, and lower your caffeine. And the person's like, interesting, and drinking their coffee, like, okay, like not going to do it, because we know what we need to do. It's just hard to go over there and do it. And so what inspires you or motivates you to change that for yourself? Because I think a lot of people struggle with,
but I don't want to change. I don't want to. I've heard before, I'm too this, I'm too lazy, I'm too tired, I can't do it. What changes your mindset to say, nope, this is what we're going to do?
That's a really tough question,
Yeah.
because it depends on what it is, right? It
Mm-hmm.
depends on, we don't change as humans. If one pain is worse than the other pain. So all of a sudden, why would I change if this pain isn't greater than the pain of the unknown, or what I'm actually going to think? We know, we're familiar with that pain. That's part of the fear, right? We don't want to step into some hall unknown, but and realizing that we have a big fear, it's more of a marketing, right? Fear of missing out.
Oh,
Ugh,
yeah.
like fear of missing out, or comparing ourselves to the reel of somebody else's social media with their best moments, living their best life. Well, you don't know right before they took their picture that teenager was, having a meltdown, or the 5-year-old just melted down, right? All you have is the cute picture, but you don't
Yes.
see all the imperfectness. And so we think everything should be perfect. And so for me to keep up with that expectations of being perfect, darn it, I better drink more coffee, right? Like,
Yep.
you can see the little fur baby right there when I did that, right? She's sleeping right there. And so I got to be able to keep up. Well, a lot of it has to do with what are we actually able to do? Maybe I need 7 or 9 hours a day of sleep.
Yeah.
Well, what's more important? Is it better for me to scream at my kids, or be cranky, or feel like I'm not getting anything done? Oh, and also realizing, what are the priorities in my life? If my priority is my family, well, if I don't take care of myself, how am I going to actually show up and be who I really want to be? And it's understanding our own priorities. Really. And
Mark
a lot of
Manson,
people don't understand what their whole value systems are, what's important to them. Have you heard of that exercise where you have like a glass face and you have big rocks, and then you have the little rocks, and then you have like the sand? If you put all the sand in first, the big rocks won't fit in it. But if you know if you put the big rocks, then you put the smaller rocks, and then you put the sand in, it will all fit. But you have to understand what those big rocks are.
Yeah. Those are the important things in your life. And Mark Manson talks about that in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. He says, are you willing to struggle to get what you want? So if you say you want to be this, like if you want to be a certain person, or get a certain job, or be a certain weight, or be a certain thing, are you willing to go through the struggle? And if you're not, then you don't really want it. And sometimes people say, but no, you don't understand. You don't understand. I have so much, I'm so much, because I'm the same way. And it's funny that you said about seeing the cute pictures on Facebook, because I absolutely shared this cute video and pictures of my daughter and I and my son taking a walk, and how fun it was. And I'm like, have a badass day. And then 5 minutes later, my daughter's throwing a temper tantrum. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just shared how cute you are. And now you're, getting fussy over everything. And it's like, I talked with a friend and she said, well, share that too. And I thought, well, what, am I going to make a post and say, earlier today, I posted this really cute photo, but then my daughter acted crazy,
Right.
You don't think about that, and I think it's so important. When you also said the experiencing FOMO, fear of missing out, I came up with a new phrase that we should coin of YIMO, YIMO, or maybe YIMO, whatever. But yes, I'm missing out. Yes, I am. Instead of that fearfulness, because it's okay to miss out. If it means that you get to take that extra nap that you need at the end of the day or the middle of the day, or that you get to slow down and enjoy the morning and not do something that you were invited to do that you really didn't want to, then say, yes, I'm missing out. And it's okay, with a smile on my face.
It is. And I think when we get really clear on what our own values are, what's truly important at this, whatever phase of life we're in, it's, John Maxwell talks about this. John C. Maxwell, the leadership guru. And I'm, one of his certified coaches. And
Yeah.
one of the things he talks about, though, is that he had knew really young, right? If you address what those are, what the values mean to you, when you come into choices, there is no choice, right? If you have committed to, I'm going to be married, for instance, right? And I'm committed to this wife, this is who I'm committed to. You don't put yourself in situations that are going to challenge your own commitment.
Right.
It's already
Absolutely.
been made. And so if you know what it is, then you're not actually missing out because you are living your own values and your own beliefs. And then if you struggle with those beliefs, right? Subconscious healing can help. The energetic healing can really help move us forward
Absolutely.
through some of those.
It's been such a great conversation, Debbie. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And I'm so excited to share your Light Up Your Worth podcast. And so where can everyone learn more about you, find out more about Debbie and what you're all about? Where can we find you?
Well, let's see. Let's start with the website. It's lightupyourworth.net. That's there. It also has the podcast on it. It has energetic healing, the coaching, talks a little bit more about who I am. And I'm on Facebook as Deborah McAllister, as if you want to become my friend, if you're not my friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's DEBORAH McAllister, MCALLISTER. But I am on TikTok as Light Up Your Worth. I'm on Instagram as Light Up Your Worth. And
I love it.
but really my site. And then on my site too, if you go to lightupyourworth.net, on there is a free energetic healing that feels like a meditation, and it's called Own Your Sparkle. And it's to
That's what it was.
really help you.
Yes, I
To
sparkled
help
all over
you
the place,
own
let me
it.
tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a free, it's a free download. You can go pick that up, and there's others there that you can go look at. But I'm starting to create a new series of energetic healings that have to do with a lot of the feelings and emotions that we have around our own self-acceptance and our own worth and value. So
I love that.
those will be up in the next, few weeks as well. But right now you can go get the free one with Own Your Sparkle.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it so much. I'm definitely going to be looking that up. And if you have an opportunity, you have got to look up the podcast because there are some great episodes. Every single one, because I've been listening since almost the beginning last year, and then listening to them now and just really feeling so much more powerful as a woman and really lighting up my worth. And so thank you for being that light that we all need in this world. So I appreciate it, Debbie.
Yeah. Thank you,
Ah,
Brianna. Let me
yes. Well,
come
thank you
on.
so much. And I definitely look forward to sharing this with everyone, and we'll be looking up to light up our worth.
Thanks.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.